Now, I want to begin by bringing in former Justice Department prosecutor Joseph Moreno, former Trump White House Associate Counsel May Mailman, CNN political commentator Maria Cardona, and CNN political commentator and former Republican Congressman Charlie Dent. Joseph, I want to start with you because this is so confusing, I think, for the average person. Usually you think it's a plea deal, they've hammered it out in advance, they go into the court, it gets more or less rubber stamped and they go about their business. That did not happen today. Why did this fall apart? But really, why did it fall apart now?
Well, Abby, it's funny because if there was one lesson I was told as a junior prosecutor, it was have your ducks in a row before you get before a judge. And for the idea that both sides didn't benefit their side at all here, whether it was Hunter Biden's lawyers or the prosecutors here, to go in and to there was the question about whether it was a little lenient. The constitutional point was about whether the diversion was legitimate. But really, it came down to a meeting of the minds as to whether or not this was the full scope of the prosecution. Could Hunter walk out and say, I'm done? And clearly, the prosecutor said, well, no, we're going to keep investigating. There are other potential crimes coming here, charges. And the defense counsel said, whoa, wait a minute. Absolutely not. And so to see this unravel in front of a judge, it must have been an amazing spectacle. But really, what a mess.
I mean, in some ways, it almost seems like the judge did Hunter Biden a little bit of a favor by clarifying that.
Well, she said, it doesn't seem, Hunter, like you actually know what you're pleading to, so I can't accept this deal that doesn't appear to be knowing and voluntary. But, what was kind of shocking to me, and I think what a lot of Republicans took away from this, is that it seemed like, yes, there was the written deal that we all know about, but was there some sort of unwritten deal, a wink and a nod deal about we're not going to prosecute you for other charges? And the judge asked the prosecutor in this case, have you ever given a similar deal, this sort of circumstance to any other person? And the prosecutor in the courtroom said, no, never before. And I think that was this, what is going on moment.
What a royal screw up by both the prosecution and the very high-priced defense. I mean, not to know the scope of immunity walking in this. Could he be charged under a Foreign Agents Registration Act, FARA? They didn't know that? I mean, there's... Maybe Chris Christie's right. They need an independent counsel to go after this.
Yeah, I mean, you raise a good point. So Christie tweeted today, I've seen enough. We need a special prosecutor who has jurisdiction over any and all Biden family investigations. This is a charade. Get rid of the U.S. attorney, that's David Weiss, and appoint a special counsel who will investigate with competence and independence. In some ways, if you are a Democrat, if you are at the Biden White House, that wouldn't be the worst thing to have an umbrella for all of this stuff, all of these wild accusations about Hunter Biden and the foreign dealings and the influence peddling, and just have someone independent look at all of it at the same time.
I think what isn't the worst thing, Abby, is that this continues to underscore how obsessed the Republican Party is, focusing on this, pushed by their MAGA extremists who have a stranglehold on Republican leadership in Congress, and how obsessive this is about going after Hunter Biden. Hunter Biden is not in office. Hunter Biden does not work at the White House. Hunter Biden did not get one vote. Hunter Biden is not running for re-election. The American people understand that. And so to me, as a Democrat and as a voter, the more that Republicans sickly obsess over Hunter Biden and talk about some ridiculous two-tier justice system when the special prosecutor is Trump appointed, when the judge is Trump appointed, it just doesn't fall on any kind of reality. And I also think that it gives a chance for Democrats to underscore and highlight the massive hypocrisy when Republicans are trying to talk about the special deal that Hunter got in passing on his family name and trying to benefit from it, when the Trump kids who worked at the White House enriched themselves by billions of dollars through the Chinese, through the Saudis, right there in the people's house. I think this is a huge loser for Republicans, and if that's where they want to focus their energies, bring it on.
See, I think this might shift the feeling, the general feeling, which I think you definitely capture, which is there is an obsession with Hunter Biden. Mm-hmm. And I think Republicans have been trying to say, no, it's not Hunter. We care about Joe, and we care about this, DOJ lack of fairness. And when you see today that there is some sort of investigation that Hunter Biden is scared enough about probably relating to foreign business dealings. Now you've got some questions that bring in the IRS whistleblowers. Now you, I think, can start shifting that narrative
I disagree.
to Joe Biden.
There has been no connection, no real connection that Republicans have been able to make.
Maria, I agree that Republicans will overreach on Hunter Biden, and I'm no Trump guy. But I have to say, looking at this Hunter Biden situation, a guy getting paid 50, 60 grand a month to serve on a Ukrainian gas company board who is admittedly addicted to drugs. I mean, this smells. It's nothing illegal, but it stinks. It just smells of influence peddling. And again, I'm not saying Joe Biden did anything wrong. I'm just saying it smells bad. The average person sees. Same with the Chinese deals. And I'm not going to defend anything that Trump did. But people are asking legitimate questions about how does that happen?
I want to ask Joseph a question here about just going back to what happened in the courthouse today. Why is it that the prosecutors would not have been clear about what else is being investigated here, especially if it has to do with FARA, the foreign registration part of this, which is a far more serious allegation? Why would they not have sorted that out before getting into this courthouse?
I'm going to put on my conspiracy hat. I'll say this. I'll say
Go right ahead.
that the prosecutors had planned to keep the investigation open so that Hunter Biden could assert his Fifth Amendment rights and not be hauled before Congress, and the prosecutors not be hauled before Congress to have to answer because they can say the investigation's still going. But then when the judge picked at that and said, well, wait a minute, why are we still here then? Why aren't we putting this off until the investigation is over? And then she put the prosecutors on this. At that point, they said, well, actually, yeah, more charges could come down the road. So I think that everyone was perfectly willing to let the investigation stay open with the hope that it would kind of quietly die on the vine in the next couple of years. When the judge called it out and kind of shone a spotlight on it, now they said, yeah, actually, we are going to keep going, and FARA is possible, and that made everyone real uncomfortable.
Well, look, I do want to move on to something else, but the die on the vine point is something that it transcends administrations here. It was allegedly dying on the vine under Trump and now under Biden, and there's still no explanation as to why that happened. I do want to talk, though, about what's going on with our friend Rudy Giuliani, Trump's former attorney. He's now conceding that he has defamed these two Georgia election workers. It's an admission that seems to come at an opportune time, but maybe he's trying to shed some legal exposure here.
Yeah, so in this lawsuit, so these are the two election workers in Georgia who were said to have brought suitcases full of ballots. Turns out they weren't suitcases, they were just bins, like hidden bins of ballots. You know, not good. So they already settled with One American News, and so now Rudy Giuliani says that the statements were false, and basically admits to that. But he didn't admit to a couple of things. He didn't admit that he was negligent in making them, so I still think you've got to prove that in the defamation claim. And he says he's going to make a First Amendment defense, which makes a lot of sense because in the political process, you have to be able to make political statements. I don't trust the elections. So he's going to try and make that defense. Hey, these ladies brought suitcases full of ballots. Does that fall under, potentially chilled political speech? Maybe not. But yes, he seems to be at least shedding himself of the discovery into his emails, into his texts about whether he knew the statements were false.
I want to remind people what Shay Moss testified during the January 6th hearings. It was really searing testimony about what she went through as a result of some of those lies.
I felt horrible. I felt like it was all my fault. Like, if I would have never decided to be an elections worker, like, I could have done anything else, but that's what I decided to do, and now people are lying and spreading rumors and lies and attacking my mom. I'm her only child. Going to my grandmother's house. I'm her only grandchild. And my kid. It's just, I felt so bad.
It's kind of crazy that it's 2 years later that Giuliani is finally acknowledging the way that he put these women through.
And it's so heart-wrenching that these women went through something like that because of some insidious lies that somebody like Rudy Giuliani was talking about, only so that Trump could overturn a fair and free election. And I think what that reminds us of is Trump can do it again. Maybe not with Rudy Giuliani, because hopefully he's not going to be allowed to ever do anything like this again. But he'll have others. He'll have others that will believe that he is going to be, cheated if he doesn't win, which I don't think he will. And so who else is going to be now going to be victimizing people like Shea and people who focus on trying to run elections and do essentially the work of our democracy?
If you're Giuliani, Joseph, and you're looking at the January 6th investigation on the special counsel side of things, starting to wrap up around former President Trump, and then you also have Georgia that's still outstanding, what are you worried about tonight?
Well, I'm worried about personal exposure, right? I mean, it's very clear. Donald Trump has an MO, which is that when people are no longer helpful to him, he discards them. And that's kind of where I see Rudy right now. I mean, he's not getting any support from the former president, not that he has much to give anyway. So if I was Rudy, I'd be saying, look, I'd be a lot less worried about Donald Trump and a lot more worried about my personal exposure, whether it's in Georgia, whether it's in New York, whether it's in Florida, whether it's in Washington, D.C. right here, because there's a number of different ways that some of these charges could follow Rudy personally.
So many of these people who made these false statements, including Rudy Giuliani, they knew better. They were being told by Republicans that, you lost the election, and they had plenty of evidence. The fact that, the question for Rudy Giuliani is, did he knowingly make those statements that were false? Or did he find out after the fact? But I'm sure that these guys were all told that they had evidence that these were not stolen elections, stolen votes. And
Absolutely.
now they're going to pay a big price, and it's tragic to see. I knew Rudy Giuliani when he was a powerful, effective mayor, and to see this man where he is now, it's heartbreaking to see this, but
All for one person.
yeah.
Well, I the way in which some of these folks, like Ruby and Shea, were picked out of obscurity, just people posting videos online and then maligned like this. I mean, you don't have to have like a file of information to know that
Their lives were destroyed.
That it's wrong to do that. But Joseph, May, Maria, and Charlie, thank you all very
Thanks,
much
Abby.
for joining us for this. And coming up next for us, Ron